It is Wednesday.
Hi, and welcome back to another episode of Newsmakers, Journal of the Plague Year. I'm Jerry Roberts. It is Wednesday, December 2nd, and we are honored and delighted to be joined today by Dan Morain, a great California journalist, charter member of the California Hacks and Flacks Hall of Fame, former editorial page editor of the Sacramento Bee, longtime LA Times guy, former author of the daily newsletter for Cal Matters, and he has now written the first biography of Vice President-elect Kamala Harris, who he has covered in one form or another since 1995. The book is Kamala's Way, An American Life, to be published by Simon & Schuster, January 12th. Thanks for coming, brother. How are you?
You bet. Yeah, it's all good.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So the last time we talked, and we did talk when you were in the middle of angst about getting the book done on deadline, we discussed the title. So I got to ask you, who finally came up with the title? Was that your title or their title, or how did that work?
Well, it was the editor's title. The editor read the first few chapters and said, "Well, this is what we shall call it." So it seemed to me to be a good title, and
Works good. Yeah. Have you seen the cover?
I have seen the cover. The cover, you can go to Simon & Schuster and click on Dan Morain, Kamala Harris, Simon & Schuster, Google that, and it'll pop up, and there's the cover. It's a nice cover. It's a nice picture of the vice president-elect and smiling and happy, and so anyway, it's nice.
And you could pre-order on Amazon.
You can pre-order on Amazon or Simon & Schuster.
All right. Plenty of free parking here in Dan's third interview about the book. We made the top 10. Well, when I did my book, 100 years ago about Diane, Diane's name was like this big, and mine was like this big, and there was a big picture of her, and it was clear what the pitch was. Is that the same case for you, or did you get?
I mean, this is it is Kamala Harris's name and visage that is selling this book. It is not Dan Morain's name. No, I'm not the big seller here. I gotta say, Jerry, I reread your book on Dianne Feinstein. Never Let Them See You Cry, I believe.
Correct.
I have it up here, not far from me.
I believe you. I believe you.
There it is, right here.
Plenty of free parking. Okay, yeah.
So I reread it as I was writing this, and it's a pretty good template. I mean, it's a very good book. It's well worth picking up, and you can find it.
If you, I go on Amazon twice a year and buy up.
Yeah, no, it's there. It's there. That's where I got it. So.
All right, let me ask you this. So people always ask me, well, was this an authorized biography or an unauthorized? And I never knew what that meant exactly. But to what extent did Kamala cooperate, or Kamala and her people cooperate with you? Zero.
Yeah. So this came together quickly. I got the assignment at the beginning of September. And the deadline for handing it in was November 3rd.
Wow.
So I did it. So she was busy. She was running for vice presidency. Some might say she was running to try to save the republic. Yeah. So she had other things to do, not talk to me. I was in touch with her press person, and tried to get some answers to questions. And I got there was only one answer to one question that I got, and that was her walk-on song. Mary J. Bilge's great song, the title of which I'm now blocking on. It'll come to me.
So they didn't answer the rest of your question? No. Oh. Well, but you covered her you were the editorial page editor at the Bee when she was AG. So, I mean, she is not an unfamiliar figure to her.
Right. So the first story I wrote about her was in 1994, when then outgoing Speaker Willie Brown gave her an appointment, and then gave her a second appointment. So and then I had seen her a couple of times. We really met though in the 2008 presidential campaign, 2007. As you will recall, she was then Senator Obama's main surrogate in California.
Right.
She was
early supporter.
She was I believe she was the first elected official to come out for Obama. And my assignment at that time, I was part of the team that covered the presidential election in 2007 and 2008. So I got to know her a little bit there. And then, of course, right after Obama was elected, that's when she announced that she was running for Attorney General. Long story short, I left the Times, and at the beginning of 2009, I went to work at the Sacramento Bee as a columnist and deputy editorial page editor, and at the beginning of 2010, and that's when the race for Attorney General was going on. Over the decades, I paid attention to attorneys general, going back to John Vandy Camp. And so it's an office that has a great deal of power, as you know, and it's undercovered. And it certainly was undercovered in 2010. The campaign for it was there just wasn't a lot of press attention to it. So I sort of viewed that as a niche. And then when she was elected, she's pretty interesting AG, and one well worth writing about. And so I did several columns, and we as the editorial page did several editorials during her tenure. Yeah. Interesting character, interesting political figure.
Well, let me revert to the political writer's book of cliches. She's kind of a Rorschach test in a sense, because you have the conservatives and the right wing, who see her as this, woke socialist who's coming to close down the churches and seize her guns, and then you have progressive lefty Bernie type people who say she's, basically a cop. She didn't do anything substantive on criminal justice reform. She tried to, lock up the parents of kids who cut school. We name no names. And, how do you characterize her politically?
Well, she is without a doubt a liberal. On sort of the big issues, women's rights, abortion rights, gun safety, gun control, same-sex marriage, civil rights. I mean, she is down the line liberal to the left. That said, she was a prosecutor for most of her adult life, and so she saw some pretty awful things as a prosecutor, and I do believe that has had an effect. She calls herself a progressive prosecutor, and in many ways she was, but she wasn't. She's not some. She's certainly not one to hug thugs, and from the left, those who would call her Coppola, she's not that either. She thinks it through. I think
she seems, and I've written a fair amount about her on CalBuzz, in the interest of full disclosure, with
I paid a lot of attention to the things you and Phil Trounstein wrote in CalBuzz, and I mean, you guys paid really close attention to her. And
it seems, the bottom line for us, I think, is she seems much more transactional, a politician, elected official, than ideological, for starters. I mean, she's.
Well, transactional, do you mean that she's making decisions based on campaign contributions? I didn't.
Oh, no, I'm not talking about financial. I'm talking about careerist transactional, in terms of she has more positions on issues, which I think calculated, and consultants and people like Ace Smith and so on around her, than hardcore principles where she would say, this is I must do this because, this is a core belief of mine. Is that,
Mhm.
what did you come away with thinking?
Well, I have to say that uh, my crash course on Kamala Harris, um, it shaded my view. I was, if you go back and read the columns and editorials that I wrote and the editorial board wrote, we were pretty tough on her as Attorney General. Not completely. There were columns that I did that were pretty positive toward her, but there were many that were not. And I came away thinking, changing my view a little bit, altering it. Um, not that I wouldn't have written what I wrote back then, but I do think that I do think that there are core principles here, and it changed when she left. The job of Attorney General, the job of the district attorney is very different from one of the U.S. Senate. In the U.S. Senate, she was, she really did take a lot of stands, and she was one of the most liberal votes. She did vote against the confirmation of virtually every Trump appointee who came before her. Right? I mean, she was in the Senate. She was really taking lots of stands that she never would have taken as Attorney General. And part of that is the job of the AG. The Attorney General is to enforce the law, to defend the state against lawsuits. I think she took that seriously.
She didn't defend Prop 8 though, right?
She did not defend Prop 8.
And so was that a principled stand, do you think, or do you think that was a politically transactional stand?
Yes, with the exception, I'm not sure that it was necessarily transactional. It was a principled stand, and it also was politically smart of her to take that position. I mean, to defend Prop 8 would have been, I think, a disaster for any California politician. You may recall during the 2010 race for Attorney General, her opponent, Steve Cooley, was adamant in his view that Prop 8 needed to be defended. The Prop 8 being the prohibition on same-sex marriage, the so-called traditional marriage initiative. He was going to defend it. He thought Jerry Brown, who was then the Attorney General, was wrong. He thought Arnold Schwarzenegger, who then was governor, was wrong. That both of them were wrong for not defending the initiative, and he was going to. Kamala Harris said during the campaign repeatedly, clearly, she was not going to defend it, that it was a waste of money, that it was unconstitutional. She kept to that promise, that campaign promise. We knew going in that was going to be her position.
Yeah. When, as I understand it, the book came about in part because you wrote a column, an op-ed piece for the Washington Post when Biden selected her as the beep.
Right.
And someone said, "Oh, there's a guy who can write a book fast, I'll bet." I just want to quote from the column. You called her a quick learner and gifted political performer with genuine star power, which I think is exactly right. It's very accurate. And I don't mean that to be reductive in speaking for the whole column, but it's interesting how much that emphasizes the performative aspects, the theatrical, or politics as theater, rather than a substantive sort of issue focus.
Yeah, well, you'll remember our old buddy, your old bureau mate John Balzar told me when I went to cover Sacramento, he said, think of yourself as a theater critic. and and write about it, write about the theater. Yeah, she is a very good political character. I mean, I was not on the presidential campaign trail, so I cannot. This book deals with her presidential run, but from a distance, because as you know, you were on many more campaign trails than I was, but you learn a lot if you're following a campaign. I did not do that, so I can't really speak to how her presidential campaign flamed out, but clearly it flamed out. But I did see her as a candidate for the United States Senate and as a candidate for Attorney General twice. And she's really good on the stump. I mean, she can be really good. She can be really engaging. The thing that strikes me about her, and this is something that I heard from more than one of source who was very close to her political operation, that what you see is who she is. So when you see the video clip of her grilling Jeff Sessions and former U.S. Attorney General Jeff Sessions, mm-hmm. And him stammering and having a really hard time answering her, when she's grilling Brett Kavanaugh and he's stammering and having a really hard time answering her, that's Kamala Harris. And when you see her on The View, who, laughing uproariously with Whoopi Goldberg, that's Kamala Harris, right? So she is she's both, and people who know her well could see in her questioning of Jefferson Sessions, they could see Kamala. This is the person who they've dealt with sort of face to face and in private meetings where she's grilled them, and then they see her on Ellen DeGeneres, and she's incredibly charming. So yeah, she's a terrific performer.
Yeah,
I think it's a long-winded answer, but that's what she is.
What did you learn about her that surprised you, or that you didn't know before you started?
One of the very first interviews, wasn't really even an interview, it was a conversation, backyard conversation. I heard a story about, you'll know Ace Smith and his wife Laura Thomas. Their daughter Lily died when she was 15 of a seizure, unexpected, this is obviously really powerful and painful and to both of them, but they've turned, they've created this really interesting nonprofit organization called Beyond Differences, which is devoted to helping kids. Their motto is no one should have lunch alone at school. It's fundamentally an anti-bullying organization, and a place where its curriculum helps teach empathy. Anyway, what Laura Thomas told me about Kamala Harris when she was running for district attorney, so this would have been 2002 through 2003, that she used to go to the campaign office, volunteer with Lily in tow. Lily was 9 years old then, and Lily had APERT syndrome. You could look at it, APERT syndrome. Brilliant kid, very outgoing, but had a misshapen head. And Kamala Harris, then running for office, very, very busy. Whenever Lily would come in, Kamala would, get down on her knees and sort of look her in the eye and make sure that, that Lily, how was your week? How's your day? Everything good, right? So just really, being a mentor type person, maybe maternal. And then when so that was that was really powerful as far as Laura could see, influential in Lily's life. And so Kamala was part of their lives, and then she died. And to this day, Kamala Harris calls on Mother's Day and on birthdays and on sort of these big anniversary days, right? So that was a story that I heard really at the very beginning of this of my reporting project. But then I heard similar stories throughout. There's a lawyer in San Francisco named Matt Davis, who one of his neighbors was an old-time political volunteer, nobody fancy, nobody big time, who knew Kamala Harris, I guess had worked on her campaign, was really glad that she was the district attorney. Anyway, she was an old woman, and she was nearing the end. She had had a stroke, and she was hospitalized at Laguna Honda, the city-owned nursing home there in San Francisco. And Matt Davis thought, well, maybe Kamala Harris, he had gone to law school with her, Hastings, that maybe he could get Kamala Harris to write a little note to this woman whose name was Naomi. And so he called her. She picked up the phone. She's district attorney now, obviously busy. She's got things to do. And her response to him was, "What are you doing now? Let's go over there right now." So they went over to the hospital, over to the Laguna Honda, and she sat in the woman's room for 20 minutes, held her hand. Who knows what was said, but it was a sweet moment. That there was no camera there, right? Mm-hmm. So anyway, so these are the sorts of things that I don't know. I mean, I've known a lot of politicians. I don't know a lot of politicians who do that sort of thing.
It really humanized your view of her.
It did. And there are more examples of that I found, along the way. So, and then she's quirky. She calls people on their birthdays and sings happy birthday. She's never sang to me. Maybe she has to you.
You think she will after the book?
Well, she hasn't read it yet. I mean, whether she will, who knows? I don't know.
One thing that happened with Diane after the book came out, people would like take it to her at events, or stuff, and ask her to sign it. And she would always write, "Don't believe everything you read, Diane Feinstein." So that was
yes. Well, yeah. I asked her about the book. This was years ago. I can't remember the context, but I said I think she was senator. I was at the B, and I said, I just read Jerry Roberts' book on you, and she said, "Oh, I never read that."
Yeah. Yeah, that's why she complained about the caption on one of the pictures.
There you go.
All right, there's a whole ton of stuff I want to ask you, but I also want to talk about Gavin a little bit. But last thing, I have to say, the right wing take on it, and it wasn't even right wing for a long time, is that she is where she is only because of Willie Brown and her relationship with him back when she was 31 years old. What's your take on that? How do you tell that story?
Well, I tell it as completely as I can. I mean, there are obviously things that we'll never know about that relationship. Without a doubt, he helped her at the start of her career. He was, he opened doors, he introduced her. I think everybody who rises in politics, everybody who rises in business has people who help them, right? I mean, Willie Brown got to where he was elected because Phil Burton helped him, right?
Mhm.
And and so of course he was helpful. He was also, but there are a lot of other people in her life and early career who were equally helpful, more helpful. Mark Buell, her fundraising chairman in her first race, was incredibly helpful. Um, and people whose name your viewers would not know, uh, were really helpful early in her life. But of course, Willie was helpful.
Yeah.
He also became an albatross, as she said, and so she had to deal with that. By 2003, which is when she's running for district attorney, of course he has been helpful, but he also I think voters in San Francisco had kind of tired of Mayor Brown then. He was on his way out, and she was really blunt in her assessment of him, basically saying, he's history. I'll be around for another 40 years, right? I mean, she was pretty bitter in an interview she gave with the San Francisco Weekly that I quote from in the book. I should say this book could not have been written without the great work of the San Francisco Chronicle and San Francisco Weekly and a lot of other, really those two did an amazing amount of work on her as district attorney. All very useful stuff.
Jackson Vanderbecken was our cop.
Oh yeah,
he did some great stuff because she had a lot of issues. I mean, the cop killing and the belonging murders and the lab, the drug lab.
It's a mess.
You go through all that stuff, I assume.
I do. As you know, Jerry, you and I met when I was based in San Francisco for the LA Times. So I was there for 7 years, but I was long gone by the time she became district attorney. She was still a deputy DA in Alameda County when I left. But yeah, so to relearn San Francisco politics, my goodness, that's a Byzantine world.
It's Beirut, baby. It's Beirut.
And it's real swampy too. It's a lot more swampy than.
Well, I got a lot. It was always swampy, but Willie really brought the deluge in.
Yeah.
When he came. So bottom line. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how good do you feel as a U.S. citizen with Kamala one heartbeat away from the Oval Office, with one being you're terrified and have night sweats, and 10 being you can't wait for Joe to kick?
I think Joe Biden's going to be there for the full 4 years, and those of us those in our profession who predict he's not going to run for a second term, I wouldn't be quite so certain of that. I think that job is pretty amazing from what I gather. So if his health is fine, he'll be there for as long.
He's already fallen apart.
That said,
he's got the boot.
Huh?
He's already fallen apart. He's got the boot already. He's not even there.
That's true.
And you know how it goes, brother, piece by piece.
That's right.
Finish your thought. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, she, we could do worse. We could, I should.
Here's my headline.
Yeah, we could do worse.
Marina,
No, I actually, so I think she's going to learn a lot in the next 4 years. I think she's going to, this is not a woman to be underestimated, and people have underestimated her. Steve Cooley underestimated her when he ran for attorney general against her. I think he thought that he had this race won. People underestimate Kamala Harris. They shouldn't do that. And so, is she ready to be president today? Not necessarily. Who is? I mean, it's such a huge job. Was Donald Trump ready
I
to be
think Biden
president?
is. I think
Yeah,
Biden's.
I think Biden is ready to be president. I don't think Trump was. I don't think Mike Pence was ready to be president. Was Dan Quayle ready to be president? I don't think so. Certainly Sarah Palin wasn't. You go back to the vice presidents, maybe Cheney could have been president. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's
I think
scary.
I thought he was, but
Yeah.
all right, let me switch gears on you a little bit. So Kamala's going to at some point, officially resign her Senate seat, and so there'll be a formal opening, and then Gavin, her old
Frenemy.
friendly rival from San Francisco, is going to appoint the successor. I know you wrote a piece about this in the Post as well, and it looks like the conventional wisdom says it's going to be Alex Padilla, the Secretary of State, former LA council person who's been very close to Gavin for a long time, endorsed him when he ran briefly for governor in 2009, 2010, which he really had a blink to catch that race. But
Right. Yeah.
so what's your take? Has he got it in the bag?
Oh, I don't think he has it in the bag, but I think, as I wrote, he is the front runner. I actually will be surprised if he doesn't get it, because I mean, politics is alliances are important, and there haven't been, I can't think of another Southern Californian who is closer to Gavin Newsom, who's done more for Gavin Newsom than Alex Padilla. It was really important. He was running against Antonio Villaraigosa, not an insignificant player in California politics for governor in 2018. And Alex Padilla was in Newsom's corner early, and that mattered. I mean, I suppose Newsom could find somebody other than Padilla. I don't know who it would be.
All roads lead to Willie Brown, and he's organized this effort, at least in the media. I don't know how substantial it is, that Gavin needs to replace Kamala with another Black woman. So Karen Bass, who had some, she was among the great mentioners for vice president, and certainly Barbara Lee, Representative Barbara Lee, who's been, really an icon to the progressives. I mean, do you think that will have much influence on him?
Well, I do think, Willie Brown helped make Gavin Newsom certainly supervisor. He appointed him, and mayor. He was absolutely behind Newsom's
traffic and parking commissioner before that.
There you go. So of course he's going to listen to Willie Brown, but no, I don't think that Nancy Pelosi, as Speaker of the House, has a very thin margin, and to take one of her allies, Barbara Lee or Karen Bass, and put either in a statewide position. I mean, what is her margin? I mean, I think, does she have
just like three or four?
Yeah, she can't afford to lose a member, especially a member who's part of her leadership team. So no, I don't think it's going to be Karen Bass or Barbara Lee. He's gonna. It's a twofer. If he appoints Alex Padilla to the U.S. Senate, then he then would have an appointment to Secretary of State to fill. So I could see, I don't know, how about Michael Tubbs as Secretary of State? Michael Tubbs is the mayor of Stockton, was the mayor. Well, I guess he's the outgoing mayor. He was just unelected, defeated in his reelection, but clearly a rising star among in the Democratic Party. He could be Secretary of State. Robert Garcia is mayor of Long Beach. He could be Secretary of State. So yeah, Tubbs is black, so I think that Newsom can finesse this. And I mean, people seem to overlook that his first appointment to the California Supreme Court, Justice Jenkins, is black. So I think Newsom has a record of
well, and there's not
diversity in his appointments.
There's not been a Latino U.S. senator since statehood.
It's important. Yeah, it's very important.
Basically, yeah. But to me, I'm just interested where you would place him on your power rankings. I mean, if it was made strictly on the merits, the guy you want there is Javier Becerra, who served, I don't know, 8-10 terms as a congressman. He was rising in the leadership when Jerry summoned him back to become attorney general. He's got a lot of deep Washington experience, and obviously he's been involved in all of the litigation and the fights with the Trump administration. You think he's on the radar, or where would you put his chances?
I don't. My perception is that Attorney General Becerra is doing a really interesting job, impressive job as California Attorney General. I don't get the impression that he and Governor Newsom are particularly close. I mean, it's not as if they're rivals or enemies or anything like that. I'm not sure what the relationship is there. I just think that if you're looking for somebody who can run statewide and who could win, I mean, certainly Becerra could run and win statewide. He's not going to. I just would be shocked if Newsom appoints a caretaker. Can't imagine that's going to be the case. So I think he appoints. It just seems to me that he goes with the person who has been there for him. But who knows? I mean, he's as you know from your days in San Francisco and since then, I mean, Newsom is somebody who comes up with surprises. So yes. So I'm not going to be shocked if I'm not going to be shocked if he pulls some sort of rabbit out of his hat. But that said, I just think that alliances matter in politics, and Padilla's been there for him.
Yeah. Well, you're old enough to remember John Seymour, who famously was the Pete Wilson when Pete was the senator and got elected governor, had 2 years left in his term. As this term has two years left, he picked a obscure state senator, John Seymour, who just screwed the pooch completely and ended up losing to Dianne Feinstein. So you got to be sure that it's somebody that can win on their own as well. I think
that's right. And it's interesting. And as I was working on that column about who Newsom might choose, I went back and read what was going through Wilson's mind at the time. There was a real push to appoint Condoleezza Rice to that position. She was in her 30s. She had foreign affairs. She had position in the George H.W. Bush White House. Right. She was a tenured professor at Stanford. She was a Soviet expert back when there was a Soviet Union. How history might be so different had he appointed Condoleezza Rice rather than dull old John Seymour of Orange County.
Yeah.
A realtor from Orange County. That'll win.
Yes. All right. The last thing you mentioned, Gavin's surprises, and one of the surprises that's been prominently discussed in the media recently is his famous dinner at French Laundry, the Chi-Chi foodie place up in Sonoma with
Napa, Yountville.
I mean Napa, with his good friend, the lobbyist whose name is escaping me at the time.
Jason Kinney.
Yeah, Jason Kinney. No masks. 22 households. Blah blah. 3 explanations of how it happened. It strikes me that this is the kind of little thing that just sticks to a guy. You know what I mean? It's easy to understand. The hypocrisy is layered and very deep on many levels.
Oh, yeah.
Wait, I mean, what do you think? It's just
I just
nothing
think
that matters.
I think it matters. I think this is, yeah. Well, it certainly will matter to whoever runs against Governor Newsom when he runs for reelection in 2022. Well, we have not heard the last of the French Laundry. No, this is, I mean, you will remember John Kerry windsurfing, and and how that was used against him.
Who among us does not like NASCAR? Yes.
Yeah, right. And you'll remember perhaps John Edwards' $400 haircut. These are the sorts of things, especially for Democrats, that are really hard to get past. I like food, Jerry. I've never been to French Laundry. I mean, I would love to go, but it's $350, $400.
Kitty didn't invite you.
He didn't invite me. It's hard to get a reservation. And we're in the middle of a pandemic. No, this. I don't. Well, I mean, the only way he gets past this is to just never do it again, and ever.
That's what they said when he slept with his campaign manager's wife too, and I guess he didn't. But
I wasn't gonna go there, Jerry. But it's just like it's. Now this is not a good look. This is not a good look for a Democrat who's telling the rest of us not to go to restaurants, not to go to bars. I've been to a restaurant since March 6th. And my guess is you haven't, right? I mean, I think if the rest of us are being told to follow the rules, he better follow the rules. And he didn't.
Right.
I mean, he quibbles. He says, well, maybe, that this, it's not good.
It's not good. All right, Dan Morain, the name of the book, Kamala's Way, An American Life. You can pre-order on Amazon now. It's out January 12th. The first biography of Kamala Harris, the vice president-elect. And thanks so much for taking the time and locking the grandchildren in the laundry bag in the closet while you're talking.
All right. Hey, can I add one thing?
Sure.
Your successor, I think, and my old classmate, John Diaz, was.
I didn't know that John Diaz went to Humboldt State as well until I was reading.
We were on the Humboldt State Lumberjack together. Anyway, John is retiring from the San Francisco Chronicle editorial page after, I don't know, 25, 50 years, whatever it is. It's a lot of years. It's been a really great page. It was a great page under you, and it's been a great page under him, and just a really decent man and a great journalist. So anyway,
good luck to him. All right, buddy. Thank you so much.
Right.
Appreciate it. Take it
Anytime.
easy.
Thanks for having me, Jerry.